Thank you for chatting to me. Now, I just wanted to talk to you about a story that was in the paper today, in The Guardian, about a case of identity theft in Gilgandra. A woman was sent a package and it had her name on it, but it didn't have her home address. It was a completely random address. So the postie actually picked it up and sent it to her workplace. And they worked out that she had been scammed because her credit card had been stolen a month or so earlier. And anyway, I just wanted to talk to you about identity theft. Supposedly it's more common in rural areas, and the country people tend to be scammed something like 40% more than people in the city. Can you tell me, what is it? How does it work exactly? And why are country people, you think, more likely?
Yeah, well, I'll go back in reverse. I hadn't actually heard the stat to say that country people are more likely to be scammed or have identity theft. Maybe country people are more trusting. That might be something interesting there, but I'm not sure exactly why. But identity theft can come in a range of forms. A full-blown identity theft is one where you will have your entire identity taken away from you. So if your name is Billy Blogs, someone else out there will basically get all your ID. So they'll have a copy of a driver's license, your date of birth, obviously, your home address. They will be able to act, for all intents and purposes, like you. So that means they can go and apply for a credit card. They can go and apply for a loan at the bank. They can go and do all the things that someone would need to do if they were you. But of course, then they have no intention of paying any of those bills. So they can go and incur debts in your name. They can go and take out phone contracts or sign up to a range of contracts. And essentially, it's a very difficult thing to do, because the way we in our society normally identify people is by their full name and their date of birth. Now, if you have your identity stolen, you can't change, or you can't easily change your name, and you can't change your date of birth. So it's a real process to go through to prove to a bank, for example, that it wasn't really you. Yes, I know I'm Bill Blogs and I know I was born on the X date, but that wasn't me who took out that loan. They look through their records and they've got all the information there that says that it was really you who took out that loan, or was really you who incurred those debts. So that can be a really challenging one to go through. So that's the extreme example. That happens less often, but when it does happen, that is a major drama, and it can take people months, even years, to recover their life and clear their name, because then, of course, they might get a bad credit rating. So then when they legitimately go and apply for a loan or get a house loan or buy a car or even just get a phone contract, suddenly their name is red flagged. The other thing that happens, this may well be the case that you're talking about there with that example in Gilgandra, the other thing that sometimes happens is someone will just simply have a credit card stolen, and in having that credit card stolen, they might go through and put in details so it matches the name. So again, Billy Blogs might be the name, but they just then have the actual item sent to a different address. Now, in the example of Gilgandra, whoever was delivering the mail there knew that person's name and went, oh, that's the wrong address they put on there. I'll deliver it to the right address. But normally you would see that happen where it would be delivered to someone in a different town, a different state, for example. It may be someone who lives in Sydney and they get something delivered to Melbourne. So it's not likely the local postman is going to know, oh, yes, I know Jane Blogs. She just lives up the road. She's put the wrong address here. It's going to be a random person somewhere else altogether. And so you can see people do things where they might just go online and buy things. So they might go online and buy shoes or dresses or electronic goods, whatever it might be. Or they might go and just order, for example, a phone contract, and a phone gets delivered to them. So then, again, when that person suddenly gets this credit card bill for a phone, or it might be a phone contract that's signed up to a certain person and then they're not paying that bill, meanwhile that person's already taken that device and run away with it. So there's a couple of different levels of it there. And I suppose you really just have to be alert, make sure you're checking your credit card bill, checking your statements, just keeping an eye out for things that happen that don't look quite right, and then not dismissing it as being, oh, well, I'm not sure what happened there, I'll ignore it, actually having a look at it and following it through.
It sounds like it's becoming more common as people become more technically savvy, I suppose. Are we going to have more incidents of this?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you are going to see more and more people using this. And that's mainly because people are doing more shopping online. As you increase the number of people shopping online, you increase the ability for these thefts to happen. Now, often you'll have information when you go and put your credit card details in with a shopping firm, then that information should be kept secure. But of course, every now and again, we'll hear about data leaks. And those data leaks might include all your details, your credit card details, your address details, all the information that you might need to be able to go along and make a purchase somewhere. If you go on the dark web, you can probably buy random credit card details out there for $50, $100 a pop. And so someone might sell those details. They may not want to do the transaction themselves, but they might sell those details to other operators who might want to then try and use those details. I think people that do this often will rely on people not checking their statements, not actually having a look at their bank accounts, because if they go and make a purchase for a small amount, $30 or $40, and if you're typically purchasing lots of things on your credit card each month, you may not even notice that $30 or $40, which is why I say to people, make sure you check it, because if they do enough of those $30 or $40, the operators, the scam operators, are making good money out of this, but relying on lots of people not checking those statements to be able to make that good money.
Yeah, that's helpful advice, actually. Okay, moving on. The Macquarie Conservatorium is running, their lease is going to expire soon, and there's been lots of talk about what's going to happen to them in the future, whether they're going to actually get a purpose-built building for them or whether they'll have to continue we'll find somewhere else to go. Do you know what's happening on that front?
No, and the Macquarie Conservatorium is typically funded, or conservatoriums around the state are typically funded by the state government. Often they're parts of education departments. From a council perspective, we don't simply have the finances to fund a conservatorium. We don't really have the funds to actually fund a building. The best counsel will do in this scenario is try and work with the conservatorium to try and help find a suitable location, but there's also going to be some cost involved with that. Again, we'd hope that the Department of Education or the state government would come to the party in helping some of those funding processes there. So I don't know anything definite that's happening around that at this stage, but we're certainly here to try and help them in some way, shape or form within reason to see that we can keep the conservatorium here, because it is an incredibly important facility for Dubbo and the region. So I would hate to see us lose that facility.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay, that's helpful. Now, moving on, I read another story today about Anglicare coming up with an idea in southeast New South Wales, I think, to repurpose an old aged care facility into accommodation for homeless people. I'm wondering whether that's a possibility somewhere in this region, whether there are buildings that could be repurposed for that kind of, I don't know, is that something that we could look at in terms of trying to address the housing crisis?
There's a whole range of things that are needed to address the housing crisis, and it's not even just an affordability status. So there are some people out there who can definitely afford to live in a home, but they just can't find a home. So there's a range of levels that we need to try and attack to try and address the housing shortage we have at the moment. There are people moving from metropolitan areas. They've finally woken up to the fact that regional living is fantastic. So they're moving to regional areas, and they're pushing the whole housing market up because they're getting out of their little tiny boxes in Sydney, for example, that are worth $1.5 million and coming out to regional areas, and they think that paying $500,000 or $600,000 for a small house is quite reasonable, which everyone in a regional area says, wow, that's way too much to pay for that. So that's pushed housing prices up. That's the people moving to regional areas has actually put a strain on the amount of housing stock that we have. And then at the bottom of that, from a financial perspective, you've got people who just simply can't afford to get somewhere to live. There's a range of options to try and address that. Having someone like Anglicare come up with a solution where they may buy some buildings that are zoned correctly and have low-cost housing, affordable housing, even just shelters for homeless people, they're all valid solutions. And again, we've got our ears open and ready to talk to any of those organisations who are prepared to go through and do that. Again, it's one of those problems where council just doesn't have the finances to go through and address the shortage directly. We don't have the money to go and build homeless shelters. We don't have the money to go and build affordable housing for people, for example, but we're happy to work with other organisations that can do that. They've got the finances and it's part of their overall construct of that particular business, and then work with council to try and deliver solutions.
Great, thank you. Now, finally, there's a student body that has been developed by the Education Minister, Sarah Mitchell, to try and address student needs, obviously, and represent them in Parliament. Now, this body is made up of a group, I think it's 27 students. There's meant to be 3 from each region in New South Wales. I think there are 8. It's broken into 8 regions. In terms of the Western region, we have 1 representative, and she's a girl from Wilcannia. We have no one from Bathurst, Orange. There's no one from Bathurst, Orange, Dubbo, all through that area, through the Central West. Is this a bit of an oversight? Like, we've got some major issues out here. It'd be great to have some students representing our region. What's your comment on that?
I'm not sure of the exact boundaries they have on each of those 8 regions that you mentioned. Having a representative from Wilcannia, that's fantastic, because obviously it's still someone from this region, from a regional area, that might understand some of those needs. But to give a better voice from the region, I think it certainly would be better to have some people from these educational areas. And you pick on Bathurst, for example, you go way back and you used to have the old Mitchell College there. You've got now Charles Sturt University. There's a lot of people that go through Charles Sturt University in Bathurst. Orange and Dubbo. Dubbo, for example, has got not only Charles Sturt University, we've got our dental school, we've also got the School of Rural Health, and that's a really significant thing that we've got there now with those medical students, which started out as the University of Sydney doing years 3 and 4 in that medical school. Now it's developed to all 4 years. This is the first year that we've got those year 1 students attending that university. So you've got some different educational needs in Dubbo, Orange, Bathurst, and I dare I say it, in Wilcannia as well. So yeah, it would be good to see some further representation in this particular region. Again, hopefully they've got some process that they'll actually be able to address that.